Hello, everyone. This is Andy here in very wet and rainy and chilly United Kingdom.
And I'm your other host, Scott, here in Toronto, where the snowbanks are melting. It is also wet, but in a different way. It's bright and sunny.
Oh, lovely. It's a nice time of year, except when it freezes again, then it becomes a problem.
I ran out of road salt. I had to go get some table salt and salt the side.
It just I have visions of you shaking with like a little salt shaker on your driveway now.
Well, it was like the box of salt. So
Yeah, no, I understood that, but it was just the image that came to my head was rather amusing. Anyway, this is the Tea and Timbits podcast, and today we are doing a funny self-reflective episode talking about how to launch a podcast for business. But before we get into that, Scott, I believe you have a story for us.
I absolutely do. Thanks for tossing it over here, Andy. We were in a situation with a client this week that I thought I'd share, and it came down to scope creep and budget management. And I think this is probably a common scenario, at least common enough for most folks, especially in the service space. The account team on my side reached out and said, "Oh, we need to talk to you," because I sell in the work and then pass it over to them to deliver. And they said, "Well, we're way misaligned on budget here." And I, "Oh, okay, fine. Like, what's going on? Did I, really misunderstood, what was needed to happen, or did I not, do enough due diligence up front to understand what we would have to do to deliver it?" And of course the project team, had a list of requirements that had come out in the initial discovery process that we do. And yeah, it was like, this was a smaller task, but so it had very quickly gotten much bigger than that. And they were kind of like, well, what are we going to do? Like, and so first of all, right? So we've all seen the situation, and I know everybody listening is probably going, "Oh, well, I would have done this, that, or the other thing," but let's just reflect on it together. So first of all, we just took a deep breath and we went, okay, so wait a minute, how did we get to this situation? Where did we start? What was the actual initial ask? And on the list of requirements now, where do we find the delta? Where do we find the gap? And can we confidently sort of justify the conversation with the client to say, sure, we heard you. Here's what it's going to take to do everything we heard. Don't forget ... Here's the line that, we're going to draw that correlates back to the original statement of work, the original estimate. And I don't know why the team sort of fell apart, because we do this all day, every day. But the miss was forgetting to set the context and establish the objective and the purpose of doing the discovery. They just plowed right through it and got excited and rolled with the momentum that was building with the client, who was sharing all kinds of great ideas and new things they wanted to incorporate, and didn't check themselves to go, this is great. By the way, we're going to capture it all, but we're going to have to reconcile this again. Like, we don't know in the moment if what you're asking for is or isn't out of scope, but the expectation needs to be clarified and this is an existing client, which is why I think the step got missed, is you kind of assume everybody knows. Well, anyway, it turned out to be a safe miss, and it was all good, because I said, guys, just back to process, back to your narrative, back to the way we've always done things, back to the familiar, do it this way, go back to the client with, you're going to have an awkward conversation, more awkward than if we'd not forgotten those things before. And of course, I got a call, an update later in the day, and it was, oh, by the way, yeah, the client laughed at us for coming in all formal and whatnot. They're like, of course, it's going to take more time and money, because I know I asked for extra things. Like, so anyway, thought I'd share that for the reminder of, setting that clarity and being clear on purpose up front, not sort of losing sight of the right way to communicate these things, and put a little faith in your clients as well to understand that you're in this together.
Focusing on process over purpose. I like that. Yeah.
I guess they have to be in balance. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And this is a common issue, of course, as you say, especially when you're already familiar with the client, or you're in a rush, or you're cutting corners. Then, just going straight into, let's get it done. And for example, we're going to talk about doing a podcast for business today. Once you've made that decision, it's very easy to just get on with it and then forget why you're doing it.
Right. Yes.
Why are we doing this, Scott?
This podcast? Well, funny, because somebody was asking me in a work context the other day, like, hey, how's your Tea and Timbits podcast going? Like, how many views and listens and downloads, and what's the size of your audience? And I just kind of laughed. I was like, I have no idea. And they were like befuddled. They were like flabbergasted. They were like, what? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. It's all in there. We have access to it. It's in the dashboard. I never look at that screen.
No, and neither of us have. Neither of us have even been motivated to look in there, because what's really great is that we meet people in various places, wherever we are, what we're doing, who say that they've listened to a show, they've heard an episode, they've got value out of it. And this is the crazy thing. I think you early on, I think you were at a conference in Texas, and you had a guy come up to you and say he'd listened to it and played it to his team. It was fantastic. And I had a guy come up to me in a gym who said he'd been listening to it. So we know it's out there, and we know people are listening, but how many doesn't really matter, because for me, certainly the purpose is, as we've been told for many years before we started doing this, share your knowledge. Your knowledge is your knowledge, and not everyone else's knowledge, but people are always seeking knowledge, especially when it comes to sales and business development. There are different perspectives, and we discovered through being in an accountability group with other people from different businesses, different walks of life, different stages in their career, that everybody has something to offer. Everybody has a different perspective, and ours isn't unique, and it isn't anything different to what you could potentially seek out or experience yourself. But we can share it from our perspectives and from our opinions. And you and I don't always agree, which is great. And many other people don't agree with what we're saying, and others really agree with it and see something in it. Some people get a little bit of value out of it, and it's all good. That's it's not there to dictate that you must do it this way or must do it that way. It's here to share our knowledge and hopefully provide some value to the people who are listening.
Yeah. And I'll say that it's not about the fact that there's any particular uniqueness. So I want to emphasize on that. And I know for me, a big hang up of kind of avoiding any kind of content generation. I'm not talking just about podcasting, but I do think it was an initial sort of hurdle that held me back. It's fun to do this. It's always kind of been an aspiration. Is I don't have anything unique to say, and nobody's gonna listen.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you what. Like, the flip side of that coin is, wait a minute, I've already got an audience, whether that's staff, whether that's clients, whether that's people on my network, and they trust me and the brand that I represent and the company that I speak for to get good work done for them, and they want to know that I know my stuff.
Yes, exactly.
They don't want to know that I do it uniquely and differently. They want to know that it is proven, that it is robust, that it is predictable, that it is reliable. And sure, we have some uniqueness about the way we do it and the experience that we've had that does differentiate us. But the point of putting the content out is to show that you belong in that room.
Yeah, exactly that.
And it adds credibility to those other moments. So I am not here, first of all, to the point we started the conversation with, it's like, you and I do this for fun.
Yeah.
I get a lot of value out of reflecting on these things that we're saying to each other. It's a way to sort of process these situations that we share. It keeps me accountable to thinking about some of these things. I'm like, oh, I bet I should, like, I'll share that with Andy next time we're on an episode. That's a good story. It keeps me thinking about that situation beyond that moment. I get tons of value personally out of that. If I can share it and other people do too, then fan-freaking-tastic. But if you're setting out to do this deliberately for its business value, which is absolutely a beneficial consequence we've both experienced from having done this, it's not about being terribly revolutionary. It is about making sure that you're seen as the right kind of person that somebody else, knows they can trust, that has built up a library of content and understanding for the services that they can bring forward.
100% agree. And I think the biggest area that people who do take that step to do a podcast often struggle with is that they focus on information rather than transformation. And they just information dump. So especially if it's a business podcast, they'll go, if you're in metal manufacturing, then it's very important that you choose these materials and that you do it in this way. And it becomes very dry and very dull, even for their customers who it is relevant for. It's about providing thought-provoking insights, really, and it's about transformation, not just information. There you go. And I think that's something that we've always tried to do. We've tried to educate with what we're saying. We know that a lot of people will go, "Come on, Scott and Andy, we know this stuff," but some people don't, and that's who it's for. So.
But you forget it too, and it's good to just bring it back forward in your mind. And whatever moment you've decided to listen in to this one or any other podcast, you've given yourself the freedom, the luxury of that reflection, and you've decided to pick a business related podcast because you find yourself in that kind of a growth mindset. So I love that information versus transformation. I'm just like, I'm going to write that on my whiteboard. That's a really good way of thinking about it, because this is not about selling. We're like, the podcast is not there to be your brochure to highlight the features and benefits and whatnot. It's there to tell the story around, the change that is going to be able to be realized. When we publish on our own corporate blog and I do LinkedIn stuff there that's not related to the conversations that you and I have, the most engagement that we get, the most watches, views, listens, downloads, reads, is not about what we do. It's about how we do what we do. So you kind of need to sprinkle it in. Like sometimes you want to do a little success story, or you want to talk about a new launch or a little highlight, and there's an audience for that. But then it's about the way that you accomplished that success, or the process you go through in order to deploy the rigor and certainty and whatnot that we're talking about.
That's right. Exactly that. Sharing that type of information. Yes, that's informative, but it is information that triggers a transformation in someone and changes their behaviors, their thoughts, they go, "Oh yeah, I could integrate some of that in my business." Yeah. So but it is very, very important that if we go right back to the beginning, the clarifying that purpose and your audience. Who are you talking to when you're doing these podcasts? Who is your typical audience? Be aware of that, because it's very important that you then tailor your message accordingly. Don't just go, "Oh, anyone who buys this thing, or anyone who works in this particular area." It's going to be too generic and too difficult to maintain, and it's going to be very difficult to then, of course, be appealing to everybody. You try and appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. But other than that, it's important to think about the structure and the format of the podcast, and somewhat develop a brand identity as well. We've gone with Tea and Timbits, which really doesn't tell anyone what this is about, right? But it felt right for us, so that's why we went with it. As we said, the podcast primarily is for us, right. And if we're excited about it, we're interested in doing it, then the people who it resonates with will resonate with it, and they'll understand it, and they'll see the quirkiness of it. They'll understand the brand identity. They'll understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But the other thing, which I really, really, really must insist on, is that whoever's doing a podcast, it invests a little bit in some quality production, buy some decent equipment.
to tackle.
So this was the first thing we did, wasn't it? We
Yeah.
got some decent mics and decent headphones, and yes, we've evolved a little bit, and our locations aren't as perfect as they were when we started, but nonetheless, and we have the odd episode here and there where the sound isn't great, but ultimately we try. What I really hate is when you hear it sounds like somebody is sitting on the toilet shouting at their iPhone on the other side of the room. Like, really? Well, this is terrible. I mean, some of those podcasts are really successful, so it's not a determination of success or failure of a podcast, but what it is it's uncomfortable to listen to, and it's uncomfortable to be part of that, and people will seek out an alternative as soon as a better produced one turns up on their list that achieves the same thing. They will choose that one. So if you are going to do a podcast, invest in a little bit of decent equipment.
Absolutely. And you do not need the pro studio stuff.
Oh, no.
I mean, we've got some decent equipment that we both use here, but if you do not rely on your earbuds and your computer speakers and a cheap Amazon kit, go to a local audio shop, tell them what you're trying to do. You might be a little bit embarrassed. Oh, I'm starting another. Like, they have a whole section in these stores for people starting podcasts. There's that many people doing it. That's not to just dissuade you from trying. It's to increase your comfort in walking in the door and realizing that they want to help you and sell you some stuff.
Yeah.
And they've got a whole spectrum of, well, start here, graduate to this end, but here's the other thing that drives me up the freaking wall about this, though. You can absolutely get way too distracted and geek out on the tech and the equipment. So go get yourself enough to get started, good audio. But I've talked to others who have done this, and they've spent months getting the right equipment, tweaking the audio settings. I'm like, so the other thing I want to insist on, and thank you for insisting on the equipment part, is just start. My business coach says it calls it the first domino. You need to knock over the first domino, and the rest just keep going. So you need to put in your calendar. We use StreamYard for recording all of these. It is great. Is it pro? No. Does everybody use it? Yes. Does it suit the need and have everything you need to get started? Absolutely. And a lot of pros do use it because you don't need to go any fancier. So it allows you to get the recording done. It saves the audio. It's got some AI features for transcripts and all that kind of stuff. It's cheap and gets the job done. So put in your calendar, hit record, do not take any retakes, and then publish it when you're done, and then do the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. but there was one step that you missed there, which I must insist on, is that you create engaging content, so that you don't just hit record and then just start babbling away with no structure. But as strange as it may seem to people who listen to this, we do have a structure and a format that we follow, sort of, and no matter how off the rails we go, we stick to the topic, and we do stick to that format every episode, and we have done since we started over a year ago. And that's the other thing as well. Set a schedule so that you do it on a regular basis. We release these every single Wednesday, and we haven't failed. And we make sure that we do that. And today we're recording this, and we're publishing it.
We might have had
to
stretch the definition of Wednesday into it's Wednesday in some part of the planet. Yeah,
extremely rarely, though. Extremely rarely. I mean, most of the time we do manage to record and release on the Wednesday, so that's fine. Sometimes we record up front if we're lucky enough to be able to do that, but today is not one of those days, and some of the other episodes are not like that. So, but again, we're trying to create that consistency, and that's important as well. So if you don't have that, you go, I've just got to do this other thing, just got to do, and then it suddenly gets put off. 2 weeks down the line, you haven't released an episode, and people want that familiarity. They want that consistency, and it can be that you only do it once a month. That's fine. You can do it once every 3 months. It's fine, but be clear about that with your listeners, and be clear about that with yourself as well, and then put it out there. And whether you choose to do a 20-minute podcast or you choose to do a 5-hour podcast doesn't really matter. It's what matters to your audience.
And to
anything
you.
else if I missed?
And to you personally, like do true. Do what is comfortable for you. That's paramount.
I think we've covered everything now. I have nothing more to give apart from diving deep into each of those things that we talked about, and I don't see the need of doing that. But if anyone does want to get in touch and do that, then please go to tandtimbits.com, where you'll find various ways to get in touch with us, listen to past episodes, and learn lots of different things about sales and business development from across the pond. Scott, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.